Roy Harper is a really hard character to adapt for children's television, specifically because a lot of his character and motivations and even his modern character is rooted in his addiction to drugs. Due to the 1971 story Snowbirds Don't Fly, all about DC's take on the war on drugs. Roy ended up unfortunately being the subject of that take, and that's something that's followed his character throughout. Like, that's the precedent for a majority of his stories, even to today in DC Comics. So how do you adapt that into a children's TV show? It's simple, you don't. Young Justice decided to take a very different route with the character of Roy Harper and basically reinvent him character-wise. But honestly, what I think Young Justice did and what the writers and crew decided to do with Roy Harper fits the universe of the show a lot better than his other character. And while seasons 3 and 4 probably could have tackled this storyline, considering that seasons 1 and 2 were under the restriction of Cartoon Network's censorship, it wasn't gonna happen. And I think what they decided to replace it with is really well done. And so today I want to talk about Roy Harper, at least this version of Roy Harper. If you haven't seen the show, you'll understand what I mean going forward. When we first meet Roy, he's still pretty early into his superhero journey. He's still Green Arrow's sidekick, Speedy, and that's the only role that he's playing currently. But he might get the chance, at least he believes he's getting the chance in this episode, to finally step out of the shadow of just being a sidekick and instead get to join the Justice League. Roy turns 18 fairly soon, so he's kind of sick of playing second fiddle to Green Arrow and feeling as though he's not a true hero himself. This was Roy's chance to finally step out of the shadow of Green Arrow, and he was extraordinarily excited for it. He was ready for it, much like a lot of his friends who were also sidekicks, Robin, Kid Flash, and Aqualad. Those three were also sidekicks and kind of rode the bench a lot of the times, even if some of them were more ready than others to step out on their own and be heroes. Roy viewed himself as being more ready than anybody else and was finally excited to go to the Watchtower, and was met with a lot of disappointment because unfortunately, instead of the Watchtower, instead, they just went to the Hall of Justice, which is a glorified tourist attraction in this show, and he wasn't being invited to join the Justice League. They weren't even opening the door for this young group of sidekicks to do anything more than continue to be sidekicks. They brought them here for show. But because Ollie has a big mouth, he let slip about the Watchtower, and so that's where Roy wants to go. Unfortunately, when Wally does not give him the option, he makes a big fuss about this. He's over just being Ollie's sidekick.
Or what? You'll send me to my room, and I'm not your son! I'm not even his! I thought I was his partner, but not anymore.
Roy quits. He ultimately takes all of that angst, that anger, and that sense of betrayal, and he leaves it all behind when he decides to stop being Green Arrow's partner. He believes himself to be better than what he is supposed to be as a simple sidekick, and I can understand his frustration there. It's in that frustration that is the catalyst for our squad that we watch through a majority of the show, Young Justice, to come together as a group with Aqualad, Kid Flash, and Robin. He's the catalyst for all of that due to his outburst and his want to separate himself from Green Arrow and to join the Justice League as a hero of his own. And so he sets out to do that exactly as he planned. He's going to go solo and he's going to do all of the work so the Justice League cannot deny him. They have to recognize that he is a hero of his own volition. They have to let him join the Justice League. Now, Roy himself will show up a lot of the times throughout this show in small bits or pieces. He's almost treated for a majority of the time as a B-plot character. And while he's technically not a part of the main cast or technically not a part of the team, he very much does feel like the seventh main character of the show, a true seventh main character. Now, Roy, especially throughout the early episodes, is, let's be honest, he's a dick, like on purpose. He's a dick to GA, he's a dick to the entirety of the team. These people who are supposed to be his friends, especially Calder, those two, especially later in the season, are shown to have a very close connection. He's a real jerk to Calder, specifically for not going out and being a solo act, but instead just deciding to make this team. He calls them the Junior Justice League. He makes fun of them. He constantly says they're not in his league. And it's shown throughout the show that him on his solo act, even when he becomes Red Arrow in episode 6, he's not doing so hot. He can only do so much as a solo hero with limited experience, and he's like freshly 18 years old, I believe, by the time we get to like episode 6 or 7. He is trying his hardest to be this hero, but he ultimately needs help. And the first person he turns to when he needs said help isn't the Justice League, but it's the team. They never really give the team a name. It's just like a covert ops team. I'm just gonna call them like the Young Justice Squad or something equally as ridiculous. Either way, Roy ultimately decides to pass off the responsibility of this mission to the team, mainly because he's upset with a brand new team member.
It's not like that. You told me you were going solo.
So why waste time finding a sub? Can she even use that bow?
He's immediately frustrated when presented with the idea that he is replaceable, very easily replaceable at that, considering how quickly Artemis comes into the picture after he's left. And this leaves him feeling very upset. What originally was supposed to be him probably working with the team has turned into Roy essentially dumping this insane mission on their lap that involves fighting the League of Assassins, or they call it the League of Shadows in this show. Gosh, DC can never decide whether they want to say assassins or not, and it drives me insane. But more importantly, we get to see a lot of Roy's ego and sort of hot-headedness. He's almost similar to Superboy in the way he gets so angry so quickly, but often cools off just as fast. But Roy has this level of ego, and he holds himself to a higher standard, to the point that he believes his friends are below him. And that's kind of insane considering he goes to them for help a lot. And so oddly enough, despite being a hero and despite being a lot of these people's friends, he ends up playing an antagonistic role throughout the first few episodes of the season, especially towards Artemis. He plays this out towards Artemis a lot as she's his replacement and later, throughout the show, a candidate for being a potential mole in the group. And he is extremely harsh on Artemis when she ain't even deserve it, bro. Like, he's just, I forgot how much of a dick he was in like the first few episodes.
Still, I'm sure GA and Bats have a reason for lying, so your cover's safe. But I warn you, do not hurt my friends.
And while he's being this hard and antagonistic, he turns around like 2 episodes later and is in desperate need of somebody to help him when it comes to dealing with a summit for peace. 2 countries are trying to come to peace. It's the Relation Peace Summit, and unfortunately, Cheshire has been contracted to try and disrupt that making of peace. In reality, it's all a plot by Lex Luthor and, of course, everybody's favorite, Ra's al Ghul, or is it Ra's al Ghul? They never decide. To essentially get the Relation government on the side of Lex Luthor and to have him look like the good guy in the Peace Summit. And Roy Harper is there to help. Whether he's there of his own volition, though, is up for debate and discussion, but we'll get there later. More importantly, he stops Cheshire's first attempt at trying to essentially assassinate 2 leaders of a foreign government, which is just so fantastic to do so with a rocket launcher. What conceivable planet? Anyways, Roy ends up getting a little bit close with Lex Luthor and has to try and not only work with him, but also work with Aqualad to solve this case. Aqualad has also been there on the side helping Roy this whole time he's been there. Aqualad has been giving him backdoor access into the Watchtower's database. There's probably a pun in there somewhere. More importantly though, he's still seeking that outside assistance and that outside help, because despite how independent he wants to appear and how independent he wants to be, eventually, especially in the superhero game, you're going to need to rely on someone. The Justice League exists for a reason. Young Justice's squad exists for a reason. But on another note, it's also this episode where we start to see the makings of Roy Harper and Jade's relationship, Jade being Cheshire. It's a very interesting one, in my opinion, because the relationship takes place entirely off screen. We get a few hints of it during this first season, which is all I'm covering in this video, by the way. But like in season 2, they have a kid. So at some point between now and then, they have a sort of Catwoman-Batman relationship, which is so ironic. It's because of Cheshire's breakout that Roy is able to discover Ra's al Ghul's like involvement in all of this. But during his time there, He has to fight Sportsmaster, who helped break Cheshire out of prison. And during the ensuing conflict, because Roy isn't very sneaky, Sportsmaster says something that gives him a bit of pause.
I hear you go by Red Arrow now. More like Broken Arrow.
What if I told you every single want, every single desire, everything that you are striving towards getting was manufactured and fake? You never actually wanted to achieve those things, but through the suggestions of others, it has become the #1 thing that you strive to get in your entire life. That's the life Roy Harper is living. At least this Roy Harper is living. I'm gonna assume, because you clicked on this video, you already know the twist with the character. But if not, Roy Harper, the one we watched throughout the entire first season of this show, is not actually Roy Harper. He's a clone. A clone implemented with suggestions and code words and code phrases used to trigger him into doing certain actions. All of that angst, all of that anger, all of that want to step out of Green Arrow's shadow and to join the Justice League comes from pre-programming. He was pre-programmed with the notion, the idea that he has to join the Justice League because Roy only exists to be a mole for the light. Now, the light is something I haven't actually talked about despite doing like 6 Young Justice videos up to this point. The light's pretty much the big bad organization that hangs out in the background and is shown at like the end or beginning of episodes. And they're basically pulling the strings from the darkness, trying to pull the world into Vandal Savage's version of the light. Many talk about the light over. Roy's whole existence simply revolves around him doing exactly what Vandal Savage wants him to do. But he doesn't see it that way. He won't see it that way till the end of the show. Every action that he takes, he believes is what he's doing to further his own goals. But this Roy doesn't have goals. He doesn't have anything. It's all manufactured and fake. That's why he got so angry and upset when he was denied joining the Justice League, denied going to the Watchtower. All of these things that, you know, a more level-headed person probably would have handled a lot better. He didn't. Roy Harper, Speedy, the original one, was abducted only weeks into training with Green Arrow and being Speedy. Green Arrow has not known a time without the cloned version of Roy Harper. This mole plot has been brewing for a very long time, but every action that Roy takes, especially going forward after the code phrase Broken Arrow was said, is almost nothing like Roy Harper, the actual character, would respond to these things. And while you watch the rest of this video, I just want you to maybe take a moment to think, why do you want something? Why do you desire something? Is it because you actually want it? Or is it because somebody or something is telling you that you want it? I don't know, just some food for thought. The rest of this episode, though, goes fairly smoothly, with Calder helping stop the assassination plot, and one of the coolest displays of his powers, like, throughout the show. They did a really great job with this episode, looks-wise. And, of course, Red Arrow and him ultimately stop Cheshire, but they get away because, you know, it's supervillains. But Sportsmaster says something very interesting, and this is where Calder is tipped in on the idea that the team has a mole amongst their groups, with the 3 main suspects of being a mole happening to be the 3 newest members. Connor, a Cadmus clone, much like Roy, Artemis, who's brand new and nobody really knows about her, and McGann. Those 3 are put up as the main proponents of the clone theory.
What Sportsmaster said. Do you really think there's a mole on your team feeding him intel?
I cannot rule out the possibility. I will investigate, quietly.
Not tell them?
Roy truly pushes the mole initiative and idea because that's what he was programmed to do. He was programmed to be specifically hard on whoever he's planting the evidence on. Now, granted, how in the world the light would know about any of this stuff? And they predict that they would join the team and that the team would branch off into their own separate group and that 3 new members would join. I don't know how the logistics of how any of this worked, but I'm gonna chalk it up to being the code phrase Broken Arrow was recently implanted into Roy. Because much like Superboy, he probably has his own shutdown code. The next time we actually see Roy though, he's been doing the solo act for a while off screen. We don't see him for like another 10, 15 episodes because he appears once again in like episode 23. And at that point, he's actually been accepted into the Justice League. They are recognizing all of the hard work he has put in. This is finally his chance to join. But ultimately, they want him to join the team first to set a good example. And Roy is willing to do this. We see that he's gained a lot more respect for the team and the members there. And I think that's actually Roy Harper talking, not just programming. I think he really does have that respect for the team. But unfortunately, he's not just there to do a favor for GA. He's there for one specific reason, to keep implanting the seeds that there is a mole on the team and to keep shifting blame away from himself and to cause chaos.
There's a mole on your team, Calder. You don't want to face it, so I will. And suspect number 1 is Artemis.
Oh, and on a completely unrelated note though, this episode houses one of my favorite gags throughout the entirety of the show. It was hilarious.
If you wanted another date, you only had to ask.
You two are dating?
What? No!
But getting back on track, Roy himself is pretty much only there to cause chaos, divert attention away from himself, and while he's only with the team for about 2 episodes, he does a pretty good job of sowing chaos. It's almost like that's assault. Wow, I forgot I left that in. That's just straight up assault. But anyways, back on track. Roy is pretty much just sowing chaos. He gets Artemis to feel so insecure about herself and the desire to keep herself so distanced from her family that she ultimately ends up throwing the entire mission off track in order to go hunt for her sister and father herself, ultimately leading to her looking shady and looking bad when Roy ends up throwing it in her face at the end of the episode because he doesn't trust her. Roy spends a lot of this time playing on the idea that he has history with the 3 people in the group that started everything, the 3 people that really take charge inside of the team. He plays on that a lot throughout these next few episodes. He's a real douche about it too. I mean, again, it's not necessarily Roy that is wanting to do these things or necessarily acting like that. That's not who he is, but that's how he is acting because of his programming.
You know, I'm getting pretty tired of you dumping on her. Her tracer, so Cheshire ditched it.
No, Artemis ditched that. To send us on a wild goose chase, she put this one on Cheshire.
Although I will say some of the jealousy for Artemis probably does also just come from the fact that he feels like he's been replaced. Something that nobody ever wants to feel. I wouldn't want to feel like I've been replaced. That would really suck. I think what gets me the most on like subsequent rewatches is the irony in which Red Arrow is so hostile to the other members of the group and the way in which he conducts himself. I mean, listen to what he has to say to Artemis.
You're not who you say you are. This isn't over. Not by a long shot.
And in the next episode that Roy has a prominent role in, he's once again only there just to keep propagating the mole issue. Except this time, all 3 members of the team that are accused of being moles are there. And he also comes along completely uninvited, as Robin was doing his own personal thing, which I'm gonna assume if you're watching this video, you probably have seen the Robin one also, so no need for me to like over-explain it. Either way, this episode pretty much serves to show that Roy is getting over his misgivings about the team, getting over the entire idea of the mole. If you're watching this without knowing the fact that he is in fact the mole, he's a clone, it almost seems as though he is finally extending that olive branch to the team, letting go of that anger and that hatred that he not only had for the Justice League, for Green Arrow, but also for these members of the team, and he's starting to see them as real people. It takes Artemis having a true conversation with him for him to get it. At least that's how it appears. What really is happening is at this point, dude's almost a Justice League member, and so his programming's just letting him chill out.
Superboy's a hothead, but I know I'm not one to talk. You could each have betrayed us here. You didn't. I'm sorry I doubted any of you. There is no mole.
Roy's story throughout this show, at least in the first season on the surface, is all about the idea of becoming independent. The first episode of this show is called Independence Day because it's all about the team becoming more independent. For Roy, this is his huge step. This is the goal he had been striving for since we have met him in the first episode. He's officially 18 and officially a member of the Justice League. He has worked so hard and come so far to achieve all of this. Sure, he set a few bridges on fire in doing so, but he kept the biggest one alive, and that was his relationship with Green Arrow. Roy was definitely a dick. Let's not sugarcoat it or pedal around it. Like, he was an asshole for a majority of this show, but in the end, he kind of just mellowed out. Once he was given what he wanted, we got to start to see who Roy actually is, the kind of person he is. But unfortunately, all of that doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, Roy's only purpose, his only need for existence, was to betray the very people he has spent so long trying to join, to betray the very people he believed to be his family. And that, I think, is potentially one of the worst twists ever. When I say worst twists, I mean like horrible for Roy, the character, like he's probably feeling terrible. I absolutely loved this twist. I thought it was really well done. And like on subsequent rewatches, you just get those little planted seeds. You see it all come together. It's absolutely fantastic and wonderful. But from a character standpoint, this is about as low as you can possibly get. This is rock bottom for Roy, especially when he figures out that he's not even Roy Harper. He's a clone, a manufactured clone. He's not even his own person. And I think that's probably what hits the hardest. And to top all of it off, not only is the Justice League going to lie on his name, but he's also being hunted by the very people he has grown to care for.
Atlas clone. We've learned the real Speedy was abducted and replaced immediately after becoming Green Arrow's sidekick. The clone was pre-programmed with a drive to join the Justice League.
The rest of this final episode of the first season, Roy spends essentially on the run and working with the team to try and figure out a way to hopefully and successfully free the Justice League from the Light's control. This is also the first time the Light has actually stepped into the Light themselves and made a real move against the Justice League after literal months of planning and years, technically including Roy, of planning and concentration. Roy has to spend a lot of this time, with his time on screen left, trying to come to terms with the fact that he did all of this. He was the mole. He pinned the blame on others for the thing he was doing. It's very hard for me to talk about this character because it's weird. It's like I want to lambaste him for making the decisions and actions and choices throughout the show because he was just a dick to some of my favorite characters. And yet at the same time, I can't do that because he was not in full control of himself for a majority of the show. It was all almost complete drive on the character's end from his pre-programming. Roy is one of my favorite characters in this show as a whole, not just season 1. Throughout all 4 seasons, I always found him enjoyable. It's just, I forgot how unenjoyable he is for a majority of season 1 until you get to the end. He ends the first season in a really dark spot. A lot of the characters by the end of the first season specifically ended in really good spots. McGann was starting to break away from her self-hatred. Robin was starting to get to own that leadership role he had been striving for. Calder found his balance between the surface world and where he is currently living. He was doing pretty okay for himself. Artemis found the person she cares for the most and was able to step out of the shadow of her family. Wally, in all honesty, didn't change a whole lot. Wally's still Wally, and he's doing fairly well. Connor not only found his found family, but also earned the respect of his mentor. Like, all of these things, they all ended on a good note. Now, granted, Zatanna is also in the same boat as Roy, is like not ending up in such a great boat considering her dad is now being inhabited by Dr. Fate. Rocket, we didn't see nearly enough of for me to give her any sort of review or preview. But for the most part, the core members of the team ended in a really, really good spot. And then you contrast it with Red Arrow.
Or a sidekick. I'm a traitor. A pawn.
Roy, it'll be all
I'm
right.
not Roy. I don't know what I am. All I know is I need to find the real Roy. I need to rescue Speedy.
It is a particularly sad ending, with Roy, or as he no longer calls himself Roy, is pretty much left in a depressive state with one goal in mind: to find the actual Roy Harper, the man whose life that he stole mistakenly, something that hurts him to the core. It's very much a departure from how obviously the rest of the characters ended, but I think it's very well warranted. It reinforces the idea that this life, the superhero life, isn't all fun and games. It doesn't end well for everyone. Sometimes it ends up horribly for the people who don't deserve it at all. Speedy didn't deserve to be kidnapped and experimented on, to have his arm taken to use as DNA. Roy didn't deserve to be used as a clone and a traitor, to be implanted with memories that are not his own, motivations that are not his own. It's a really dark and bleak look into superhero life, I feel, especially for like a kid's show. But I think that's part of what made this show so special and so entertaining to watch. I really enjoyed getting to look back at season 1 of this show. It gave me a lot of opportunity to open up about myself, to do some digging on my own, to share my own trials and tribulations in my own life. And it was very enjoyable for me to watch these. It also gave me things to think about. Why do I do the things that I do? What end goal am I ultimately trying to reach? And are these things that I want to do something that I actually want and value? Or are these things simply something somebody has put in front of me, somebody else has made me want to gravitate towards and get because it would make me look cooler, it'd make me look better? It's that sort of idea that this specific character has left me with. I know it's a weird thing to take away from it, but for me, I took away from Roy to be very careful about what my desires are, what my aspirations are, and why I want them. And to be more cognizant of that, especially because we all live in like one gigantic algorithmic bubble 24/7, especially like if you're on YouTube, watching YouTube, or TikTok scrolling like I do. Just ironic, those are the only 2 social medias I use. It's just a good practice of the mind to be a little bit more conscientious of the ads you're seeing, the videos you're watching, the messages they're trying to propagate. Hell, I'm propagating a message right now in this video at the end. Just be cognizant of those things and potentially why they're being shown to you. Anyways, soapbox time over. That's what I really got out of this and got out of talking about Roy. I have a lot more to say, especially when we get to seasons 2 and 3 of this show, which I'm very excited to cover on my channel going forward. This is probably my last video for season 1. Maybe. Probably. I don't know, no confirmations. Also, what do you guys think of the new username? I could not for the life of me ever pronounce the first one that I chose. And it was honestly kind of annoying. So I decided to change it. I don't know, comment down below if you think it's a cool change or it's a bad change. All that fun stuff. Truly thank you all so much for watching. I love making these videos. It fills my cup. It's something that I genuinely enjoy doing. And I'm looking to make more videos that I enjoy making rather than just making videos because I feel obligated to make them. If you want to leave a like, it's free, it helps out the channel a lot. If you want to leave a dislike, please dislike, but then tell me down in the comments below why you disliked. Constructive criticism helps me to be a better creator for all of you. If you want to support me further than just watching the videos, which you don't have to, I do run a Patreon, in which for $1 a month, you can just show your support for my channel. You'll gain access to the Discord, you'll see these videos early, you'll see them unedited, as some videos require me to do heavy changes for the YouTube version to go out. And as well, if you're a part of the $5 or above tier, I shout you out at the end of each and every one of my videos. So shout out Belladonna, shout out Oscar, shout out McGann, shout out eSibert13, Shout out Gabriel Lafonte, Transgears1, Video Gamer 75. Shout out Golden Boy 420, Dakota Rawson, Donovan Gomez, and MC Bond 27. You all are amazing. Hope you'll have an absolutely fantastic day.